Would you believe it if I told you that the background you're actually seeing is actually a fake background? I could even prove it by swapping from this to this and to this. Hi, my name is Tech Mode, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can use Adobe Firefly to actually swap out backgrounds. It's very important to do that because it's going to save you, some money buying a lot of assets. And then at the same time, you can test out and see what kind of props you could put. We're going to use generative AI, and trust me, it's going to be a simple step-by-step process. Now, so a few things I want you to consider when you're recording is to make sure that you have a little leeway around your head in case you're going to be zooming in and out of the video. We'll actually see that later on. Secondly, try as much as you can not to move your hands too far away. The idea is to blur out the little chair beside me, and I don't know if you can see the TV stand beside me as well. I'm going to be trimming out those two edges and bringing them into DaVinci Resolve. I'm so excited to show you this little trick that I learned, so why not jump in, grab your coffee, and we'll get into the tutorial. If it's your first time using DaVinci Resolve, I'll also show you about the software, the interface, and how you can take your clips, cut them, edit them, and we'll use generative AI to add some props in our background. So let's dive into the tutorial. All right, so let's start this entire process from scratch so you can see how I was able to create that, and then let's create our generative AI background fill. So the first thing we'll do is to create a new project. DaVinci Resolve, no brainer. I like creating folders to keep everything organized. So I'll create a new folder. I'll call that fake_bg_main. That's going to be the name of our folder. I'll hit create. And once we have fake BG main, we can go in that folder and then we can create a new project in that folder. And I'll call that FBG for fake background. And I'll hit create. So Resolve is going to basically just create that project for me. So now that I have that fake background project, what do? The first thing to do is to import the footage. And you are there on that project. If you look at the top over here, we can actually see we have fake BG. That wasn't so hard, was it? All right. So now that we have that, let's import our videos. So I usually have them on my Blackmagic camera folder. So I'll just go over here, Blackmagic cam clip, and I'll take this take 2 copy, which is the name of the folder, and I'll drag that onto here where it says master. To make that really easy, what we can do is to make sure we are on the media tab, which is the first tab. So click on the media tab at the bottom over here. That's this location here, just right here. That's our media tab. It's our first tab. Go to the media tab and just click on that location. And once we're in the media tab location, that should be totally fine. So what we can do is just click this to minimize this. You can drag this to the side. And let's also drag our folder to the side as well. I'll take 2 copy and make sure you drag this to master and just drop it there. It's going to ask you if you want to change the project frame rate, click change. And now you can see it's bringing in everything organized in our folder. If you didn't do it like that, what will happen is it's just going to bring in your clips without seeing anything. So that's the first step. The pre-step is to record your clip. And after recording your clip, setting up your lights and make sure you have good audio, make sure you test that you're recording, you bring in your clips. Now your clips are going to be raw, and there's a reason why I named this A-roll. Now A-roll is your main talking head roll, and let's just go ahead and see this in action. Now in Resolve, when we have our mouse over a project, you can actually see it on the screen. It's just going to be scrubbing through and we can see the content here. Let's go over to the edit tab, which is the 3rd tab here. And now on the edit tab, what we can do is to create a timeline. So if I right click and go to timelines, I can just create a new timeline and I can give that a timeline name. I'll just call that main. This is our main timeline. It only has 1 video and 1 audio channel here where we can drag in our videos. So this is our A-roll. We'll just click and drag our A-roll and place it here. Now it covers the entire length. If you want to minimize that, you can just click here and set the full extent zoom so you can just see the entire clip here, like so. And as we drag our playhead over, we can actually see where everything begins right here. So let me just go ahead and test this. So good. Just where I said, would you believe it? I'll just put my playhead over here and you can click the blade tool. You can hit the keyboard shortcut is B, click the blade tool and click the blade here. And if this linked selection is on, it's going to slash everything together. We can go back to the select tool by hitting A. Now, the shortcut I use to cut is Control and the backslash key because it looks like you're chopping the timeline, and that's the one I like to use. So I'll just hit delete and it should shift everything back to the right. Now, we have a problem here. If I click on this clip, we notice that it's vertical. I want this to be horizontal. So let's check out two ways to fix this. The first way is to click on the gear icon, which is at the bottom right of the screen. And over here, our timeline resolution is fair. If you're using a higher resolution, you might want to turn this down. And also for your video monitoring, you might want to set this to a HD format just to reduce some quality. And you can copy my settings here for optimizing media and render cache. Now, if you want to learn more about how you can optimize DaVinci Resolve, you can click the video on this section that will show you how to do that. So I'll just go ahead and save this. And now let's go ahead and rotate our video. To rotate our video, there are two ways we can do this. We can click this tab over here, the transform tab, and here on this white section, we can just drag and rotate that. But to be more accurate, I'll just go over here on the rotation angle. By the way, if you can't see the rotation angle, click the inspector. And also, I want this view to be the same as the view you're seeing. So I'll go to workspace and go to reset UI layout. That way you actually see two source views, and this is the view we're working with. This other window is for dragging in your clips and actually testing them to see how they work. Now, if I turn on the inspector, I'm on this clip. I can just go to the rotation angle and type in 90 degrees to rotate that. But we're not done yet. We notice this is a 1280 by 720 resolution screen. We need to expand this a bit. So I'll click over here, go to video where it says zoom. Just make sure we're on this video where it says zoom. I'll just drag this till it covers this extent like so. And that's going to be our main resolution. I'll go ahead and click away from here. And if we press P to preview, you can actually see this is the entire frame that we're actually seeing. I'll just press P or hit escape to go back. Now, you might notice the timeline has been shrunk. What we can do is to go to the top left here where it says shrink, click on that shrink so we can expand this timeline. Now, I'm just going to quickly drag over and trim to just towards the ending, like so. I'll just drag this towards the ending. And I'll just play that just a little bit more. Dive in the tutorial. So just where I said, let's dive in the tutorial, I'm going to use the other method, Control and / or Command /, and that'll just slash the clip from there. And I can select this section and hit Control X to delete that. That way, we've brought in our main A-roll talking head, and we actually have it here. Now, the next thing we want to do is to, work on balancing this footage. It's a really good footage, and I like how the lights are, but we can actually enhance this to give it a specific look, right? So we can first balance the lighting, and then we can color correct everything. So to balance the lighting, we'll go to the color tab. I'll just go over here and click on over here on the color tab. By the way, that button was to disable the fusion and color effects. In case it's slowing down your system, you can click it again. I have a link to a tutorial where I'll show you how to optimize DaVinci Resolve. So here, I'll just go to the color space. And what we have here, if I go back and click on the color wheels, which is at the top panel over here, and I go over to the right and click on color wheels, we can actually see these wheels. I'll go ahead and click on clips just to have a little more space to see what we're working with. So here, this is a node, and a node is basically a section in Resolve that performs a specific task. It just has one specific task, and we can chain these nodes in DaVinci Resolve to work with our color. So let's go ahead and chain this. To add another node, I'll use Alt-S to add a serial, and then Alt-S again to add a serial. So the first one, I'll right-click, and I'll set the node label. I'll call that balance, because I want to work with the contrast and balance and all that. So here, make sure this is clicked. You know which node you are on when it's red. And over here on the bottom, I'll click on the parade and change this to waveform. Now, waveform is going to tell us which of our sections is actually going off or being underexposed. Here we can see at the bottom, we have some, overexposure here, sorry, overexposure at the top and underexposure at the bottom. And I'll try to just balance that. So first I'll go to the lift, which is the darks, and I'll just push that slightly up a bit, just a little bit, so that it's slightly, not on zero. And here for the gamma, which is the midtones, I'll just drag that to bring in some of the details of the skin. And our gain, which is our highlights, I'll just pull that down so that nothing is actually clipping and going beyond the 1023 mark. And then finally for the offset, it will just set a balance to everything. So in case I have my gain very high, I can just drag my offset and set that. And now the reason why I'm working on this balance is if I hit Control D to disable that, that's the before, this is the after, before, and this is the after. I don't want to lose details in my shadow. So next, what we're going to do is just add some slight color to this. So I'll go to the lift and I'll right click this node and call the node label color lift, because I just want to bump the color a bit. And I'll go to the lift and push that towards cool. You can actually see it's a bit purplish right now, which is a look I actually like. So, and then for the gamma, I'll just drag that towards the green, like so, just slightly, not too much, that's too much, just slightly above. And then for the offset, I'll just move that towards cyan. So right now, if I hit Control D, you can actually see the subtle difference that is actually adding. And then finally, because I don't want to overdo this, what I'll do is to go over and play around with the color boost. I'll just drag that bit. That is too much. So to reset something, you double click on that and that's back to 0. Let's try the saturation. I'll just bump that a bit. And I'm actually looking at my chart. I don't want this to be too much. And I think this is a very good look. I'll go over finally to the curve. And in the curve, I'll click on here, like so, and the top. Now I notice there's a lot of blue here because blue is dominating. So if I click the blue channel only, I can drag the blue down. You can actually see that this blue is up. I can just drag the blue down towards the other color so I can have a warmer look for the flesh tones. The same thing I could just do here, like that, like so. Right. So the curves are very powerful and important. We can use that to play around with our color. And then finally, we can do some additional things like add more looks and play around with the curve more. So example, I could just go over here and then add more of that look, like so. And push that down a bit. So you can actually see just by, I'll just right click on this and I'll call the node label look. So if we disable everything, if we start with the balance and disable the balance and disable the lift and disable the look, this is our original footage. And this is it with this, and finally with this. So this is a new look I'm applying. So if we go back over here, our clip has all these applied to it. Now we can turn this off and see the original and see the final. We've added a nice little warm, cool tone to this. Now it's all subjective. If you want, you can darken this more by going to your color sections. And here, if we go back to the wheels where we have our balance, we could just dial this down a bit to create some nice little, shadow effect. If this is something you want, but I don't want to make it too dark because I don't want to lose details in the color. So I'll just leave it as it is. So that's it for our color balancing. So now let's grab a still, which is a picture from our frame and which is the third step. Let's grab a still. So here on the color page, if we actually go here, it says no stills created, right? So we can actually right click on the image and say grab still. And basically what that is going to do is to grab a screenshot of our image. I can move over to another section here where I'm talking, like here where I raised my hands and have the hand over the head. I think I like that. Just over here, I can right click and say grab still. And now I have two stills. So now that I have grabbed these stills, what I can do is to right click and I can export this still. I can basically export the color, or I can export the lookup table files. I can export the DXP files. I can even create a color cube, but I'll just use a PNG file here. And in the generative AI folder, I'll just click there and hit export. So I'll do the same thing with the one I'm throwing the salute. I'll go over here and I'll say export. And with that, I actually have another still I have exported here. And now we can go back to our video. Now, to make DaVinci Resolve perform faster, when you're in your edit page, you can disable the color and fusion pages. So if I click on this, I'm bypassing any color I've actually worked on to this look. So that's going to make your system much more faster. So the next thing we're going to do is to go to Adobe Firefly and then sign into an account with Adobe, and we can import this clip, the stills, and then bring the skills back to Resolve. So first, I'll open up my web browser. So I'll just go over here, click on the web browser, and I will search for, Firefly, Adobe Firefly. Good. So I'll just click on Adobe Firefly. Click on Adobe Firefly again. So now that has opened up, I can go to my page over here and I'll just sign out of this account because I want to use a separate account. If you don't have an account, you can easily create an account with Adobe. So the account I want to use, I'll click continue with Google and I'll use this other account. All right, cool. All right. So once you're on the main Adobe page, we can just click on Firefly here. I'll just click on Firefly at the top. Just click on that. And what we want to do is to go to the generative page. So I'll just close this. And here we can just go to image. And once you click on image, you'll see generative fill. So we want to use AI to generate and fill up an image. We'll go to upload image to upload one of those stills. So I'll go to my generative AI folder and I'll click on this still and I'll click open. And this is going to load up and open this still. I know how to use this. It wants to do a quick tutorial, but I'll just, get rid of that. So the first thing we want to do is to use the paintbrush and select where we want Firefly to replace the image. And I want it to replace the image from this quarter here. So I'll just go ahead and paint out this section right here, just gradually painting out this section. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'll do the same thing with this right section as well. So I'll just do this and just paint out this section. Now you have to be very aware of something. If you overuse this, you have about, I think, 10 attempts. Adobe is going to tell you that you need to pay for the subscription. So that's one caveat you should be aware of. So here, I'm going to type a prompt, and I just want to be creative here. So what I want to do is to tell Firefly to create a nice prop for a YouTube background. So add things like a plant and lamp. Let's just say a desk lamp. Now, the more you give it more details, it's going to query what you mentioned and generate a bunch of these. And the entire idea is to create something on the left and something on the right. So, the reason why I said don't move your hands too far away, and that's because moving your hands too far away will just make everything look weird. So now we actually have a little lamp by the right, and we have a plant on the left. That's actually nice. So we can click on this, and I don't really like how this looks like. I think this one is simple, right? So if you don't like that, we can click more, or we can cancel the generation and set the query again. So I'll cancel this and say create a nice prop for YouTube background, add plants. Right. So I'll just click add things, add plants. Let's say add plants and a bookshelf, like so. So add plants and a bookshelf, and let's hit generate. So I'm going to stop at this second iteration because I don't want to overuse, what I have. So let's see if it generates something interesting for us to use. So we're just waiting for it. It takes a little patience, and it depends on the computing power and your internet speed. So I'm just giving it a few seconds here and waiting. Yeah, I think this is good. This is very good, but there's no plant here. Yeah, I love this one. In fact, I personally love that plant at the side. So I'll right click on this, or we can say keep, right? So let's keep that one. And I'll just right click on this and we can download this. So I'll go here and say download, and we can download this first one. That. Cool, that's nice. So we have this. So what I'll quickly do is to import this image into DaVinci Resolve. So we'll go here to DaVinci Resolve, and just over here, we can hit Control I to import, and we'll go to our downloads, and I believe it's called Firefly, this one. So we'll hit open. Now that we've gotten that image from Firefly, what I want to do now is to bring that image into DaVinci Resolve. So after we've imported that, let's drag this into our timeline. So I'll just place this at the top here. Now, there's going to be an issue sometimes if you're trying to select and expand the duration. So to solve that problem, all you need to do is just expand, go over here, and just zoom in your clip a little bit. So if you can zoom in your clip, you'll be able to just click and drag the extents. So that's how we can, extend that, because over here, if it was over here and we just press play like this, I could even prove it by swapping from this to this, and then you actually see, what happened over there. So this just, you understand. So I'll just go over here, and where I'm saying this, I'll just place this over there. I could even prove it by swapping from this. So good. So where I say swapping from this, I'll just zoom in on the audio. So you can hold shift and drag the audio like that. Just press L to play. Swapping from this. So just where I click my hand here, I think it's okay there. We can still expand more to get our detailed zoom. Swapping from this. Okay, there's a slight delay, so I need to bring this back a bit, and from this. Good. So, but the problem is when we swapped right now, the entire frame just remained frozen. So what we need to do is to crop out the video underneath. So to do that, I'm selecting the video on top. I think we need to put this on top or under. Either way, you can play around with this and see which one actually works for you. And then over here where we're saying we're clicking, I'm going to hit Control and Backspace to just cut it from that point. We can even do things like add a marker and just say cut 1 and hit enter, and we can always double click on the marker and change the color. The marker just tells us what's happening. You can add more details to your marker. See, we could say things like swapping here, and done. So anytime we click on the marker, we can see some text. You can use this to give your friends and give your co-workers information about that marker. So here, where it says swapping from this to this, and so this is the second click. So this to this. So I'll stop this from here, and I'll bring in the other generative, images I've worked with. So I'll hit Control I to import this, and I'll look for the folder where I have them. I believe they're here in Gen AI, and I can bring in this one. Hit open. I should have just imported all of them. So this is one, and this is another one. So I'll drag this second one. So and just place that right here. So let's play this now. This to this and to this. So when I say to this, it's going to stop here, and then I'll drag this to make sure this length stops here, and then this is going to be the main one. This and this. So I'll just do 2 of them, just for this sake, and I'll also cut it from here. If you want, you don't need to cut this. So how do we make the this shelf appear underneath the video? Because I don't want to see myself. I just want to see the shelf. So it makes sense for me to cut this. So I'll just drag this up here and take the B-roll and put it on top. So now I have this at the bottom. And now with my video file, and again, I'm just going to drag this over here and cut this, Control Backspace, and I'll drag this on top as well. And I'll put this image down just to have the image at the bottom. And so on the top now, I can select this and go to cropping, And here I can crop bottom just to have the right part, and I can crop top just to have the left part. Now, the reason why it's like that is because remember, our video was vertical and we switched it. So now if we play this, let's go ahead and drag this to this. And so where I said to this, I want the other one to appear. I'll just go ahead and copy the same settings here. So this is 126 and 98. So I'll just do 126 and I'll set this to 98. And I'll pretty much copy the same settings for crop top and crop bottom here. So crop top 126, crop bottom 98. Now you notice something weird happening here because it's trying to it's too hard. That detail is too hard. So we could just play around with the softness to blend that in with the image. And I think it's fine like that. So I set the softness to a very high value for the second one. So, and that's it. So let's go ahead and play this. This, to this, and to this. Hi, my name is Tech Mode, and basically that's how you can bring in your background. Now, if I wanted this second background to last the entire project, all I need to do is to minimize this, and then let's open that a bit so we can grab the handles, and we'll just stretch this down to the end like so. And this is going to be all throughout my entire clip like that. So let's see, there's a little problem here. It's only going to last this clip. Okay, this to this, and to this. Hi. So again, what we need to do is not do that. We'll drag it back. And here we will take this. Remember, we had to take our clip, back up like so. So I'll take the B-roll up and then take this image, the second video image. I'll just hold Alt and drag that to the right. That will simply just create a copy. I'll just hold Shift and drag this. And with that copy, I could just drag this to the end. And I'll just drag this down a bit so I can just see how that is. Just drag this down to the ending of the clip. And then we can simply copy the crop properties, 128, 98. So we'll go over here, crop top, 128, crop bottom, 98. And then we can play around with custom softness, like so, just to dial that down towards the center. And if we drag this clip, you can actually see we have. Now, remember when I told you that be careful how you move your hands? And I did this on purpose. We can actually see that it's actually ghosting this section. So when you see that happens, you can try and work with the softness to bring it back, but it's going to break that illusion. Another thing you can actually do is to make sure that you are focused and use a wide lens to cover that entire space. Or you can go back to Firefly and basically use this section. Or if you're in really serious trouble and you don't want to do all that, all you need to do is just get rid of the crop bottom on the left, and you'll see you don't have any of that ghosting you have on the right for that section in that clip. But then again, your plant disappeared, which is not good. So if you want to publish this in Resolve, if you're like ready to publish, all you need to do is to go over. Before we publish, I'll show you a neat trick on how to master your audio real quick. So the first thing you want to do is to normalize your audio to ensure that all the levels are equal. To do that on your audio, right click, then go to normalize audio levels, click on true peak, set this to -2 decibels, and click on normalize. This will normalize your audio. And then what you can do is to go to the mixer if you want. And then once you play this, hi, my name is Tech Mode, and in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how. So I'm just bumping up the volume on the mixer a bit. Also, if you're on the audio clip, you can go to the volume and just set that to about, just 0.2. Adobe Firefly to actually swap out. Cool. So now that you're happy with this, we can turn off our color grade and see how we are. This is super good. This is nice. So what we can now do is to go over to the Publish tab. And then on the Publish tab, we need to set an in and out point. If we go to the Edit page, to set an in point, take your playhead, timeline playhead to the first point, press I, and then take your playhead down to the last point, and let's make sure that's the out point, and hit O. That's your in and your out points. And once you've done that, you can now go to the deliver page, and you can see you have that same line over there. And let's say we want to publish for YouTube. There are other formats here, but I'll just click on YouTube, and here I'll just call it out test. And because we used a 4K resolution for our video, we need to set our video back to 4K. So here I'll go over to this setting, click on this, and here I'll click on this 3084 by 2160, and I'll save this just to make our resolution back to the high quality resolution. If we try to play this, you might actually notice there's a little bit of lag. That means it's now using the high quality details. And I'll just give this, click on YouTube again, give this a name. Let's call that output 1. So with output 1 now, all we can do is to go to and make sure everything is good here. Frame rate, resolution. We can still use a high resolution or a lower resolution. I'll leave it at the HD resolution. And I've already normalized the audio. I don't need to do that again. I can click on add to render queue. We'll select an output location. I'll call this output 1, hit save, and I'll hit render all. So after hitting render all, it's going to render each frame step by step. And then with that, we actually have a complete video. So that's how you can use generative AI using Adobe Firefly. There are most likely other free tools you can use to generate your output. But for this tutorial, I'm using Adobe Firefly. Remember, there's a limitation to using Adobe Firefly. I believe after 10 prompts, you'll be required to pay, or you have to wait for a month for it to restart or reset so you can use it again. Thank you very much for watching. You can check out my DaVinci Resolve playlist over here. I provide DaVinci Resolve tutorials every Saturday. If you found this useful, do leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll see you guys in another DaVinci Resolve video. Peace and see you soon.